Right, kiddos? What? Some days. All right. Well, it is 6 o'clock, or actually 2 past, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Open prayer and get rolling. Lord, we thank you for allowing us to gather back here this evening. We can gather back in your house. Lord, I pray you would be with us as we sit down and, again, we look at finances. Lord, I pray that we would do them with a mindset, a biblical mindset, a mindset of yours in mind as we do that, and that we would not get caught up in just accumulating wealth, Lord, but we would view it as a tool to be used for growing your kingdom. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, last week, I know we started into this section. We talked about wills and kind of a little estate planning. Turn that on, it works better. Beneficiaries and that kind of thing, that kind of stuff. So we're going to pick up, though, with the next section. Before we do that, though, I do want to, just for fun, because we talked about some calculators that are available to you. So we're going to put together real quick. We're just going to kind of see what, my mouse comes over, there we go, what we can do. So, or what could happen, I should say. That'd be a better way to put it, and theoretically possible. So with 40 years of age, because why not? That's me. That will be me in a few months. So, and I'm saying I'm going to work till I'm 70. And so I just picked a $45,000 number. I think that's probably roughly around average in this area. I know the nationwide average was 61-ish, something like that. I think we're probably on the lower end on that. So let's say that, how much do we want to set aside every month or every year? I guess it doesn't matter if it's our percentage, but what number we want. Remember, I said 15 was the number, but let's just do, for fun, let's just do 7. And let's just say that, I've got 10,000 sitting somewhere. May I have a 401k or something like that. We'll say a 3% increase. And I'm going to have everything paid off, because that's what the goal is, right? Get everything paid off. So I'm only going to need, let's just say I'm going to need 60% of my income when I hit retirement. And I think I'm going to live to 100, because why not? So we do that, and then I can go down here and say my returns, add that in. All right, so if I want to make a 9% return. I put 6% inflation. Who knows what that actual number is? Let's just pretend it's 6. Exactly. So based on this, it says that I ain't going to quite make it. I'm going to run out of money by the time I'm 82. But do you see what that means I hit? That's $637,000 in just that. If I started with only $10,000, and I'm only putting away that 7%, if I bump that number up to the 15 that we talked about, boom, looky there. I legit run out of money when I turn 100. I didn't plan that. But look at that. That puts us at a millionaire status, doesn't it? $1.2 million, okay? And it also says that my annual retirement expenses are going to be $63,000. If I lower that number, obviously, that increases that. And I'm not including Social Security. Look at that. If I check that little box, that is just shy of $24 million. Now, these aren't made-up numbers. These are like legit things that can happen. All right? I also said that I'm married. So, but even if I adjust my rate of returns during and before retirement, I mean, those numbers, if I drop that down to, say, 7, come on. Thank you. If I say 7% and 7%, it's going to affect it. But, I mean, it's still $11.7 million at the end of retirement, or at death. So that's a nice inheritance to leave to somebody there. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. So these numbers, I mean, this stuff is doable. And I'm only putting away 15%, so that's, $7,000 a year is what I'm doing that off of, and I started with 10 is all. So this stuff is doable. It's not, sometimes we look at that stuff and say, well, that can happen for everybody else, but it can't happen for me. But if you can come up with an extra $7,500, $8,000 a year to bank somewhere, and we talked about, what's that car payment? What's the, what's all that stuff? The mortgage, what is all that stuff? Man, you can get all that stuff cleared out. That's additional cash you have available, and you can start pumping into the stuff, and it can really grow, and it grows fast. Once it gets rolling, for those in the math and engineering field, like that nice little parabolic curve, and it just keeps going up and up and up. So I did want to show you that bankdeals.com, or bankrate.com. It used to be bankdeals.com. They changed the name. Bankrate.com, they have a retirement calculator. You can view all that. So any questions on that, or do you want to throw some other numbers in there just for fun? Just for fun, I did do this one time, and I put some in there who was making $30,000, who had $1,000 in the bank, and I think I put them at age 25, and they were multimillionaire, making $30,000 a year. So, and 3% increase is not a huge increase. That's a standard CPI for most of the time. Although, and that's not even keeping up with inflation, if you realize that. So, it is doable. All right, let's jump in for tonight. So, what about, we'd entitle this section, Your Children's Children. So, kids, grandkids, or your grandfriends, college, okay? And you'll see why I mentioned that. We've got three elements we're going to talk about: the ESA, the 529, and then a custodial investment account. So, first one, the ESA stands for Educational Savings Account. It's the Coverdell Educational Savings Account. Probably, I'm guessing Senator Coverdell or somebody like that sponsored the bill and got their name attached to it or something. But ESA for short, it was created as a section of the tax code that was created to allow tax advantage savings for education. It's a federal program. It has a annual contribution limit of $2,000. So that's all you can put in for the beneficiary every year. You can invest that, so you can open that up through a brokerage firm or a bank or something like that. It does have an age limit on it. I think, Drew, this is actually, I think, what you were looking at was the ESA, because you'd asked that question. By the time you hit age 30, you must use it. If you have not used it all up by the age 30, you have to draw it out. You don't get a choice in the matter. And if you draw it out and you're not spending it on educational things, you're going to be taxed on it. So, no. It does not have an age limit. 529s do not have age limits. None. ESAs do. 529s do not. That's why nobody goes that route as much anymore. Again, tax-free qualified expenses. Now, it does have a little more flexibility in one category, that it can be used for K-12, and the expenses do include things other than just tuition. That's going to come into play when we talk about the 529s. So it does have a little bit more flexibility in that regard. If you're doing an ESA, and some people do both, you kind of need to know how much money you're going to need to spend on college and only put in that much, okay? And even let it grow to that point. So, because once you hit that point at age 30 and you're not using it anymore, you're going to have to pay for it. You're going to pay the taxes on it. So, that is the ESA in a nutshell. Very similar things. You're going to hear more things that are going to correlate back when we hit the 529. 529, it's a newer product, federally created, but it's state-sponsored. All 50 states have their own 529 program. And then there are 529s, they're called more like generic 529s. So you can get those through a brokerage firm or somewhere like that. There is a maximum contribution limit on it, and that is the maximum needed to fund education. What is that number? I don't know. So the states actually have defined those limits. So in the state of Missouri, we have the peak. It's $550,000. So you cannot contribute more than $550,000 to a beneficiary's 529 plan. Now, that doesn't mean the account can't grow above that. It just means you can't contribute more than that. Okay, that's the most they could have put in that account. And that is the total of any accounts, because in theory we're talking about this, that you can have more than one account for one person. So, a grandparent and a parent and an aunt and a neighbor could all have a 529 for this one child. So if you add all those numbers up and you put them all together, they cannot exceed $550,000. I doubt that's probably a problem for most people because that's a huge chunk of money for education. But there's a limit on that. The gift tax limit does come into play on this. The gift tax, the way that works is you are allowed a gift tax exclusion. So you are allowed to give anybody you want up to this 2023. The limit is $17,000. So you can give $17,000 to literally anybody you want to and not have to report that as a gift tax. That's a gift tax exclusion. If you give more than that, that goes against your lifetime gift tax limit, which is $12.92 million. I'm pretty sure I got a slide on that later. But $12.92 million. Anything over that you give, then there is a gift tax penalty that you have to pay on top of that. So you are limited to the 529s of $17,000 per beneficiary. So there's my slide. Look at there. I just click next. You don't get penalized. It just counts against your federal gift tax exclusion or your gift tax limit, which is, at this point, is $12.92 million. Word on the street is that number will go back down. It was raised, and it'll probably go back down. So, in the state of Missouri, if you have a Missouri plan, the state of Missouri will allow you to deduct up to $8,000 per individual, 16 for married, of the account owner. Now, that is key because the way 529s work is most every 529 plan allows anybody to contribute to the 529. So I could contribute to yours. If you set one up for your kid or grandkid, I can contribute to it, but only the owner will actually get the credit for the tax deductions. Now, to get around that, you just create your own 529 account and add that person as a beneficiary, and then you get to claim the $8,000. Now, that is an $8,000 aggregate. So if you have 4 beneficiaries, you can give each of them $2,000, and you get to take out the $8,000. If you had 10 beneficiaries, then they would be down to $800 a piece. So if you wanted to maximize the tax deduction, you can give more, you just don't get to deduct it. So on that. And again, so it's the account owner that gets that tax deduction. You have to hunt for some of these things to find that. Again, you're not limited to your state, but you must follow each state's rules. So some states have a really not great 529 program, and so people don't invest in them because they're not great. Other states have great ones. Missouri has a pretty good one. We rank in the higher realm of things. They are tax deferred, but tax-free distributions on qualified expenses. What are those qualified expenses? There's a whole list of things. What's cool for post-secondary is that includes your room and board. It can include your food meal, your meal plans. If you need a laptop for your class, you can buy a laptop. If you need internet at your apartment to do school, you can claim that as a 529 expense. That is for post-secondary education, okay? If it's non-qualified withdrawal, just like everything the government has set up, there is a penalty for it. It's a 10% penalty, plus you pay taxes on it at your tax rate. So this is where there is no age limit on the beneficiary, okay? So every indication, and I've searched and searched and searched, and Drew, if you can find that, I'd love to see it. But I've searched and searched and searched, and I cannot find anything. In fact, the words no age limit are posted on 529s. The ESA, because when you're looking at them both, because they're so similar. The ESA was the first one, and then they're like, I mean, this is kind of silly. We can let them have a little more stuff than that, so the 529. And it still exists, and there is some reasons why, and we'll talk about here in just a few minutes, why you might want both of them, or one or the other. The cool thing about the 529, because this is the question anybody does when they're doing an educational plan, is says, but what if my kid doesn't go to college? What if my kid is awesome and gets $1 million in scholarships? You know? I'm making that up. Not totally, though. But what if that happens? So all that money is just wasted. Now we got to pay a tax penalty on it. We got to do all this stuff. No, not necessarily. Because the cool thing about a 529 is you can transfer that beneficiary. You can say, okay, your sister doesn't need the money, but maybe you do. And so we can just say this money is now your money. Boom, done. So the member of the family is pretty broad. I mean, the tree is branching out here on this one. So I'm going to read these just because to show you the branching of it here. A member of the family is defined as mother, father, or an ancestor of either. So grandma and grandpa could put the money back in their name and go get their masters at age 80. Why not? Son, daughter, or descendant of either. So they could just hold on to the money, and then when they have kids, you could put the money in their account. Stepfather, stepmother, stepson, stepdaughter, brother, sister, stepbrother, stepsister, half-brother, half-sister, brother or sister of the mother or father of the original beneficiary, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, father-in-law, or mother-in-law, son or daughter of a brother or sister, so be niece and nephew, spouse of the beneficiary, or any individuals named above, so any of the spouses of anybody in that previous list there, or your first cousin. Literally, that's first cousin. Yeah, second cousin, too bad, but first cousin, you're in. You know, so maybe So you don't want a rich uncle; you want a well-funded 529 cousin who doesn't need it. That's who you really should be looking for. And then a legally adopted child is treated as a child of the individual as if it had been by blood. So that is the cool thing is you can transfer that money then over, including you could transfer the money to yourself. If you were the account owner and you made it for your child, you could say, well, they don't need it, but I've always wanted to get my degree in such and such. You could transfer the money, put that money as yourself as the beneficiary. So, and no. Mm-hmm.
You start using it, but you don't use it all. Can you transfer it then to another thing?
My understanding is there is no limit on beneficiary transfers. There's no time limit even on it. So it's not limited to you can only do one, and then you got to wait 12 months. There's no limit on it. Now, some of the plans will put time limits on things, like the money must be in the account for so many months before it can be drawn out. There is some accounts that will do that. Missouri does not have that on theirs. Missouri most529.com is our website for ours, and it is so the Secretary of Treasury, the state treasurer is the one who puts that and creates that setup, and so operates that. So they're kind of the one behind it there. You can invest that in a variety of funds as allowed by the plan. So just like any other, whether that's your 401k or anything like that, the account manager is going to say these are the package of funds that we're going to allow you to invest in. And so it's everything from, and they're going to be mutual funds. So you're going to see aggressive things down to just interest-bearing accounts, okay? And depending on your timing on that, if you're starting your account for a kid and it's going to be sitting there for 10 plus years, well, maybe you want to put in more of the aggressive side of things. If you're putting the money in this year and they're going to college next year, you probably don't want to be investing it. You probably just want to put it in an interest-bearing account and let it grow a little bit of interest because it's going to go right back out. All right, so you're just using it at that point more or less as a pass-through fund. Get the tax benefit and then distributing it back out. As any mutual fund, look at the fees. There's going to be fees attached to it. And so you're going to see the exact same thing that you would see on any other account. Now, you may struggle trying to find the actual fund itself. Like if you search for the fund name, like on finance.yahoo.com, you go to that, you may not find it because this is starting to move into a little bit more of the institutional funds. And so the only way to invest in these particular funds is if you're doing it through the 529 program. You're not going to be able to just buy into that fund on your own. Sometimes. Some accounts, no. It's the same fund either direction. But sometimes they say, we're going to create this fund specifically for 529 accounts, and only people who are investing through 529s can actually invest in this fund. And it might be an aggregate of some of the other stuff they've got. But you'll still get the fee schedule. You'll still get the yield rates and all that stuff the same. And you'll have to look at, whenever you create, and I didn't mention this, but anytime you buy an investment, you're always going to get a prospectus, and that is them giving you information about the account so that you are being an informed investor. And it's also going to state in there something about how that past performance does not guarantee future returns. This is not we're not telling you what is going to happen, we're telling you what has happened, because nobody can predict the future. But what if you're like the end of the run, and what are you going to do? And you got your scholarships. Or what happens, say that you paid out the money and you got the money, and then all of a sudden, boom, you actually get a scholarship, and so you don't need that. You're getting a refund. What do? You can put that money right back into the 529. You can restore it back, and there is no penalty for that. And then it'd be as if you never taken it out, okay? Or, here's the other cool thing, you don't have to put it back. You can still keep it. You will not pay the penalty. However, it becomes taxable income. So you will pay it it will be considered as taxed income on that. But it's not going to be, you won't pay the 10% extra. So you might say, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to go ahead and take the money. I'm going to pay the taxes on it. It's done well. I'm going to take some of the returns, go with it. It may be beneficial financially to do that. And just treat it as if it was just an investment account. Because it's not going to hurt you insofar as an additional penalty. It's just going to be your tax rate. Speaking of scholarships, and I did not mention this when we were talking about student loans and what you can do without, this falls in the category of things you can do to not have to have student loans. But just Mexico schools. In 2023, last school year ending, Mexico schools gave out $730,940 in scholarships. And just running through there, only highlighting the five-figure ones, we got $48,444. I got 13,150, 39,650, 24,2, 38,3, 11,7, 19,9, 11, 16. We got a 15, $66,000. Somebody got $66,000 worth of scholarships. That's some pretty good money there. 12,000s, quite a few 12,000s, 20,000s, 24. I think the 66 was the peak. But there is a ton of scholarships out there, and that's just Mexico. I mean, think about that. That's just, we're a small-ish community. And there was $730,000 worth of scholarships given out on that. Scholarships are available. Take some effort. You got to work for it, but there's nothing wrong with making the kid work for their money, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. People do it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of free money. You got to look for it. You got to work for it. Some of that is a lot of it's based on academics, but a lot of it's, writing essays, things like that. And you can get help doing that, I mean, if you spend 10 hours on an essay, just think about that. Say you spent 10 hours writing an essay, and you got, $1,000 scholarship, you work for $100 an hour. Who in here would not work for $100 an hour? Yeah, buddy. Writing a paper? Yeah, buddy. Think about that. Scholarships are available. And one of the things that you'll continuously over and over and over, one of the negatives on 529s, negatives on ESAs, and negatives on the custodial accounts is this may negatively impact your federal aid. For a majority of people, when we say the key words federal aid, you know what that's a code word for? Yeah, student loans. Yeah, federally backed student loans. The number one, or I should say the biggest use of the FAFSA is figuring out what kind of student loans you're going to get. It's not the grants. It's not that kind of stuff. Most people don't get that. The income limits are fairly low on that. And if you can qualify for that, more power to you. But most of the time, the FAFSA is used for figuring out student loans, that information for that. So, but if you're doing the scholarships and you're doing the 529 or the ESA, do I really care what my federal benefits package is going to look like? That's not my concern anymore. Okay? The other cool thing, they just started this. This went into effect in 21 or 18, I don't remember now. And that is you can actually take, say you have money left over in your Roth IRA, you can then take up to $35,000 of that and roll it into a Roth IRA. So now, not only did you save up for your college, but you potentially saved up for your retirement as well. So it doubles up on that. There is some rules on that. So you are subject to some of the Roth IRA rules. You do have to have, your income limits and stuff like that. But the money has to be 15 plus years old. So the money has to be in the account for 15 years. So they don't want you just doing that as a backdoor to the Roth IRA. This was money that you set aside for your education, and awesome, you didn't need it all, so now we're going to let you fund your retirement with that. Anybody can contribute. This is the cool thing. So Missouri Most program, they actually have a thing called, was it UGift, I think it is, and you'll get a little, you'll generate like a little hashtag code, and you give that code to family, friends, post it online. Who cares? It doesn't matter. If somebody wants to click that link and put money in your account, do you care who it comes from? Not really. But that's exactly what you can do. You get this little code, and that code correlates to the beneficiary on that, and then that money, they can contribute money into the funding, your beneficiary's 529 plan. And then again, I talked about if you want that tax deduction, you've got to be the account owner. So like a grandparent or an aunt or uncle or something like that, you can create your own account, and then you would add that, the individuals as the beneficiaries. So whoever's going to get the money, whoever you're saving the money for, is the beneficiary on this, okay? And again, the beneficiary could be anybody. There's no limit on that, okay? To create an account for a beneficiary, you have to have a Social Security number and an address, okay? So date of birth as well. The normal stuff you'd need for a financial account, okay? When can you start a 529? Anytime, as long as they have a Social Security number. Somebody asked, we're pregnant. Can we start a 529? No. They don't have a Social Security number yet. You got to wait. As soon as they get that Social Security number, then your next call could be the state of Missouri saying, I want to pump up my 529. But the other thing that you can do with it is you can repay student loans for the beneficiary or the sibling of the beneficiary, okay? That is the limit on that one. It's just those two parties, or I guess I should say those two entities, and you do have a $10,000 lifetime limit. So you can only pay off up to $10,000 of a student loan with the 529. Any questions on that? So we'll talk about another angle of it here in a second. So they'd be on the beneficiary's money. So if you had two beneficiaries, then they could each, so yes, I believe so. So I don't know if that limit, the $10,000 lifetime limit, I have to look and see if that is limit on the loan or limit on the beneficiary. Okay, so I mean, because if it's the beneficiary, then if you had an individual and you had two kids, one has $20,000 student loans, and they both had $10,000 in the account. If the limit is for the beneficiary, not the loan, then you could just use both funds to kill off the student loan, in theory. But I don't know if it's the loan has the limit or if it's a limit for the beneficiary. But there is a $10,000 limit on that. So. Mm-hmm. 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 The account owner decides the beneficiary, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So one of the things that you should do, and it's an option that's given, is you can create a successor account owner. Otherwise, the mess you start running into is if you do not have a successor account owner and the account owner passes away, then it becomes part of their estate. And now you're back to probate and that whole mess, okay? That which we tried to avoid at all possibilities. So what you would do, most likely in our grandparent situation, the grandparent then would set the parent as the successor trustee, basically, of the account, successor owner of the account. So the parent could, yeah, mm-hmm. Yep. And so in that situation, say, okay, we had another child born. You know what we're going to do? I'm going to just make the opt-in. I'm going to split that beneficiary's money over. I'm just going to separate that account. Done. At that point, now you have two beneficiaries, and they're sharing that same pot. So there's a ton of flexibility in it. That's why it's I hadn't done a lot of research into this till a couple years ago, because I was never I was more of the mindset of, yeah, but what if they don't go to school? Then the money's locked in for education, and I really hate giving the government money, like that 10%, which is a big number. But I was like, that really bothers me. I really don't like to give them extra money, And I'm like, but when you realize the flexibility of it, and then I think it also spurs on a spirit of generosity, because you can have that conversation with the child. Look, you've done really well, and now you have an opportunity to be generous to your sibling or to a cousin, or, and again, you can save the money. What about, say you get married and your spouse, what about them? Well, then you could help fund education that route. So there's a ton of flexibility in it. So knowing all those details, like I said, researching out, I'm like, so we've gone that route and set it up on that, the 529 route. Not the ESA. Didn't have as much benefit, perceived benefit for my direction. But the 529 definitely. Any other questions on the 529? No. Yep, that's next. Yeah, no. That is the limit on it. So any others before we move to the next slide, which we'll get to that. All right. K-12 tuition. They changed the rules again a few years ago. This one I think was 18. I think the Roth was 21. You can now use your 529 funds for tuition for K through 12. Private, religious, out of state, doesn't matter. If they are a private school, they count. Okay? K-12 education. You are limited to $10,000 per beneficiary per year, okay, in tuition, and it is limited just to tuition. So, whereas post-secondary, you can buy your computer, you can buy your laptop, your internet, you could pay for room and board. Real quick on the room and board. What if you live off campus? You can still pay for room and board, only up to the limits of what it would have cost you on campus. What about my food? What's the food plan going to cost you on campus? You can pay for your groceries with your 529 that route. So you just got to keep track of what it's going to cost you. But for the K-12, just tuition only. So, for example, the Southside Christian Academy, if you're using the 529, it will pay for the tuition, but they have a separate charge for curriculum. You cannot you cannot use it for the curriculum cost, although it's minor in the grand scheme of things there. So that does have that limit on it. What's cool? The most plan does not have a waiting period. So legitimately, say you're enrolling at Southside Christian Academy, you could put the money in there tomorrow and then write the check out on Friday and get the tax deduction for it. Again, that limit is just for tuition on that. Any questions on the K-12 side of things? Oh, for some others of us who got excited for a bit, it does not work for homeschooling. And there is a couple of states that there might be some legal loopholes you might be able to make it happen on, but Missouri, no. So that's something that's being pushed for, and when that was being talked about, it looked like that was the direction they were going to go. However, they tightened the language up to limit just to K-12 private schools. And like the state of Missouri, if you're homeschooling, you are not considered a private school. You are a home educator. So that does not count for homeschoolers. And even if it did, because it doesn't include curriculum, it just includes tuition, I don't know what the benefit would be. I mean, just pay your... That might, yeah. That may be... Yeah, so if you were doing an online school, maybe, but if it was considered homeschooling, home education, it would not count. Because like I said, you can go across state lines and private school and it still covers. So, same thing with post-secondary on that. Yeah. Actually, that was a question that was raised, and it all depends on how. So it has to be, if that's yes and no. Because somebody asked the question, they were going to send their daughter to a summer program at a college and the college is a 4-year accredited school, as we're going to talk about what schools are okay. And they said the school can normally accept 529 monies, but because this is not post-secondary education per se, it was considered enrichment. And it wasn't K-12 education either. So therefore, it would be disallowed. It would be considered an enrichment. Yeah, that's a gray area. I don't know on that one. You'd have to do some checking on it. If you're taking it towards college credit for a degree, this next rule may get you where you won't be able to do that too, because you have to be a minimum of a part-time student. You have to be 50%. Probably not going to be that case. Yeah, may or may not be. Going there as a, junior or something like that. Depending on how you got your hours set, you may not hit that limit. As we already talked about, tuition, room, board, books, software, equipment, lab fees, food. Off-site meals and housing, not to exceed your on-campus prices. The limit on that is they must be able to accept federal aid to accept qualified payments. So at the post-secondary level, K-12, if you're a K-12 school, you're good, doesn't matter. But at the post-secondary level, college level, you've got to be able to accept federal aid. Most schools are going to be that way. And that even includes a lot of schools that are overseas. Because if they accept U.S. aid, if the FAFSA would apply for them, and you go to the federal schools code list, that's a list, you can look up the school and see if they exist on the list. If they're on the list, your 529 monies will count. If they're not, sorry. The big one that I can think of right off the bat that will not work for that is you cannot go to Hillsdale. Hillsdale does not accept any federal money whatsoever, not even federal student loans. Nothing. So you would not be able to use your 529s at Hillsdale. But that's a small, very small segment on that. I will even check to see if College of the Ozarks may not be on the list. I have to look because I don't know if they accept federal or not. But most every school, definitely all your state schools are on the list, and most of your private schools are going to fall on that list. You can also use it for apprenticeship programs. So say you're going to, there's a paid apprenticeship program, your 529s can go towards that. And in some situations on that, I believe they can fund some of your equipment cost. That one's a little grayer. You have to do some checking on that. But definitely paying for the apprenticeship program itself. So any questions on the 529s? It's kind of a cool deal. Another cool snippet you can add in, it's free, UPromise. So the state has paired with, it's an app. You download the app, and it's basically a click-through page. So you bring up the app, you're going to buy something at Walmart online, you click through UPromise, go to Walmart, and they'll give you 2% back. And they'll put that into your account when your account hits $50 per beneficiary. That does not mean $50. So, like for ours, we don't get a payout till we hit 100 because we got 2 beneficiaries. But you can get $30 just for signing up. So, yes, again, like all of those programs, any rewards program, what are they doing with your information? They're tracking you. They're selling it. Understand that. Know that when you're getting into it, okay? You are sacrificing a modicum of your privacy on that. But the cool thing with UPromise is they will pay you a penny for every receipt you scan in from anywhere. Anywhere. And you can pay cash. They don't care. Just take a picture of the receipt. And if you bought oranges that day from Dollar General, they'll give you 2 cents because you bought oranges. So, crazy. But yeah, get the UPromise app, and it will link into your account as well. Custodial accounts. So what if, you got the 529, you got the ESA. The last one is a custodial account. And so that is an account that is created for the benefit of an individual that is currently a minor. Technically speaking, 529s are also custodial accounts. They just work a little bit different because they have different rules, and they're tax advantaged. It automatically becomes their account once adulthood is attained. So that's kind of a state-by-state thing. Some is 18, some is 21. So for sure, by the time you hit 21, the account is yours as the minor. It is subject to gift tax limits. Again, we talked about the $17,000, and then your lifetime limit of $12.92 million. But it is considered the minor's money and is taxed as such. So that money can grow in their account, and until you hit, so the way the government, for 2023, the government considers the first $1,250 is tax-free. So it doesn't have to be reported, doesn't have to be taxed. The next $1,250 will be taxed at whatever the kid's tax rate would be, which is probably going to be pretty small, okay? The remainder isn't going to be taxed at the parent's rate. If you are getting $2,500 in dividends in a custodial account, you've done darn well, okay? I mean, that means, you you think about your dividend payouts. Dividends are, 3%, because that is, it's money that would be 1099, okay? So that's 1099 coming back. So one of the things you can do is by setting up that custodial account, money can go over there, it can grow, and it's growing at a relatively tax-free rate while they're a minor, okay? Now, once they hit that age of adulthood, whatever is considered on that, then they're going to have to start paying taxes on it regardless of what the amount is. But, that first $1,250 in dividends that's going to be tax-free on that. So there is a tax advantage on that. And the other thing is the flexibility on how it's used, because it's just an account. You can use the money however you want, okay? So there's no limits on it at that point, because it's no different than your bank account. That's what it is. And technically, if you have a bank account for your child, that is technically a custodial account. You are the custodian of the account. It's their money that you are overseeing, okay? That falls under what's called the UTMA or the UGMA, which is the Uniform Transfer to Minors Account or the Uniform Gift to Minors Account. One was first, and then one came after it. They pretty much do the exact same thing. There is a slight difference. One of them allows you to transfer pretty much anything. You could transfer your portrait, the Mona Lisa. You could transfer that to them and not have you got the gift tax exclusion in there, but very easily done. But that's what you're going to see a lot of times, is subject to UTMA or subject to UGMA language on that. One of the other things you can do with it, because this is a warning too, but the money is the minor's account, because it is irrevocable. So once you've put the money in their name, now you control it, but once you put the money in their name, it's their money, and it will be their money. So what if they decide when they're 21 they're going to go out and then go to the boat and gamble it all the way on the slot machine? That's their right to do that, okay? They get to do that. So there is the warning in that. But like Proverbs 22:6, from verse, we all know it. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. So if you're doing this, if you're creating a custodial account, what do you need to be doing? You need to be training in finances. Yeah, this isn't something you start when they're 16. It's something you start early on. Because, and still the risk runs. My libertarian nature is, it's yours, you blow it. There ain't no more coming, sorry, I ain't doing that twice. And I've got some friends that, they had some situations where if the child could get access to the money, they would have burned through it pretty quick, and that's just the nature of it. And they had other kids that, would have been just rock solid, and that was their down payment on their house, but it is irrevocable, so there is that warning with that. So, use wisdom in that, but it is definitely an easy way to do some training on that. It is less tax advantaged. You're going to pay, there's no tax benefits per se, except for, remember, their money is growing while they're minor up to that $1,250 limit and then the $2,500 limit. It's growing at tax-free or low tax rate. So there is a benefit on that angle, but you don't get any benefit. You don't get a write-off or anything like that. And it's easy to set up. Again, if you have a bank account for, a child, they don't need much information. It's, it's a 20 minutes and you're done. Online, same thing. You can set up the online accounts. I know some individuals, they said, it's great. We love, especially the online banking. They said, it's great. They get birthday money from grandma or something like that, We just, $20 bill comes out of the birthday card, puts it in their pocket, go log into the bank account, $20, move to kid's account, done. Right then and there. It's already done. And so the savings just happens just like that. So it is great for a savings plan and the teaching tool, because the kids get to look at their money and they see, they can see that money growing. You see those numbers getting bigger, and so there can be some excitement in that. It's like, hey, look, your interest is growing. You got paid interest this month, get them excited about that. And then, hey, what do you think you might want to spend this money on? Maybe let's create some goals here. Let's create some savings plans. You got this thing over here that you've been really saving up for. Well, let's create a goal for that. And it gives you that opportunity to let them have some control, definitely guided control, because you're the one in control over it till they're an adult. But it's their money, and so there is that ability to work with that. Highly encourage, if you got kids, to set that up on that regard. And grandparents can work with parents to get that set up as well. You can do some stuff there too. Because again, going back to that gift tax thing, the gift tax exclusion, that applies to anybody. You could legit give $17,000 to your 10 best friends if you wanted to, and it does not count against your $12.92 million, which seems like a huge number, when you think about it. So, any questions on any of that? All right. Some resources. I've mentioned several of these in the past, but Bankrate.com, Investopedia, it is literally a online encyclopedia for investing. Dave Ramsey's website, tons of resources there, calculators as well. CollegeSavings.com and SavingForCollege.com. If you want resources on as far as scholarships, they have that. But that's where you get tons of info on your 529s. You can compare state by state if you wanted to on that. Crown Financial Ministries, and then Compass Financial, Howard Dayton, founded Crown, merged with Larry Burkett, and then now started his own gig at Compass. So there's that. If you say, I'd like to play on the stock market, but I don't want to play with my own money, the cool thing is you go to Investopedia.com. They actually have a stock simulator account. You just create an account and play with fake money. And it actually tracks the exact stock market. So you say, well, what if I bought this much stock? I'm going to just play around, and and you find out how good a stock picker you are or how bad a stock picker you would be. And all it costs you is some time. So, all right. Does everybody have a paper from last week? If not, we got more. Okay. Well, got another one handy. I can bring mine up on the computer. All right. So we talk about last will and testimony, which is what? What's the last will and testimony include? It does what? Yeah, states, who's going to get you stuff? No, I give Ron mine, so I've got mine on the screen. Who needs a will? If you got something, you need a will. If you got stuff, you need a will. What is a beneficiary? Yeah. It's for the benefit of. On a minor account or even an IRA, because technically IRAs, like a Roth IRA, those are considered custodial accounts too, a different type of them. And you'll see sometimes the letters FBO for the benefit of on there. So beneficiary is something that's for the benefit of. All right, TOD. It does mean that, but no. Transfer on death. But technically, legally speaking, the TOD determines the TOD. So at the time of death, there's a transfer on death. Yes. Do what? Yep. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go through probate. Exactly. Probate's a mess. I've seen probate cases stretching out years over that. Multiple years. Well, we talked about, some that date back from, the early 2000s or the 90s, and there's still litigation going on. Another time you might see sometimes instead of TOD is a POD, and it's payable on death. So it's a very similar thing on that. ESA. Savings account. Yep. Mm-hmm. And what is the age limit for ESA withdrawals? Meaning it's when you have to. 30 must be liquidated by age 30. Otherwise, you're going to pay the penalties on it. True or false? 529s can pay for K-12 tuition. True. 529s can buy supplies for K-12. False. Yes. And just real quick on how you pay out on a 529. So you have two options. You can direct the 529 account holder, whoever that investment firm is. You can direct them to send a check directly to the financial institution, Or you can have that money sent to, say you're paying the bill, you can put it in your account. Just make sure that you have everything documented, okay? Keep receipts and that kind of stuff. The safest route, of course, is to make sure that check was made out to the school, because then nobody could ever say, well, no, my name was never attached to that ever. It went straight to them. And school, as long as they know, it's going to say on the account whose account it is. And most schools, at least post-secondary, they know what 529s are and they understand how that works. And you can always talk to the financial aid accounting office and they'll direct you on that. True or false? 529s can buy curriculum for homeschool? Sadly false. Yes. Maybe someday. What are 3 qualified expenses for post-secondary 529 withdrawals? Yeah, room board, tuition, yeah. Food, laptop, yeah. Lab supplies. Some people said, what if you say you're getting a degree in a specific area and, your job, you're going to need a certain set of tools for your said job. If that's something you would be using in school, meaning that would be, like lab equipment or something like that, if it's a legit, now don't stretch it because they'll come and get you. And then you're paying that 10% on that, and that's ugly. But if it's something you would be using, then you can buy it while you're still in college and get that tax savings on it. Age limit on 529s withdrawals? Till death. True or false? Custodial accounts belong to the account creator. False, yes. And the 2023 individual gift tax exclusion, $17,000, yeah, exactly. And otherwise, and if you do go over that, it's not a major deal. You do have to report that on your taxes, and the IRS, on a spreadsheet somewhere, has your $12.92 million, and they'll subtract out, that if you, and it's the difference. So say you give somebody $24,000, or something valued at $24,000, because it's also the value there too. You give them $24,000, you would subtract the 17 out, which means that you gave them $7,000 over. So the IRS on a little magic spreadsheet off in the land will put down 12.92 minus $7,000, and now you have 12.92 whatever, 91, and yeah, remaining in your gift tax limit. So if you do go over, it's not like in the world, oh my gosh, what have I done? No, it's okay. Just know that there will be a form that's filed, and they're going to keep track of that. So, any questions on anything we talked about? This is the last night of the technical stuff and the money, the interaction of the money. Next week's going to be the last night. We're going to talk about something a little bit different and talk about something that we haven't talked about yet, which you might have thought about, you might not have thought about, why it's been missing. But we'll talk about that next week. So this is the last. So if you have any questions on anything we've talked about the last few weeks, or how any of this works, or say, hey, I saw this, and I was thinking about this, or wondering about this, now will be the time to ask. And again, if I don't know, I will find the answer, or do my best. All right. Well, then that will conclude that. Next week, like I said, it's been entitled Preparing the Student for Death. It sounds morbid. It's not. Don't worry. But it's hopefully taken everything we've talked about these last, 8, 9 weeks, and kind of tying it all back together and changing maybe your viewpoints on things, on a little bit on stuff. So, all right, well, if there's nothing else, then close out in prayer. Lord, we thank you for allowing us to gather back here tonight. Lord, we thank you, Lord, that we are immensely blessed. And sometimes we forget that. Lord, we have a lot of things. We have a lot of stuff. And sometimes, Lord, it's mind-boggling to think about all the stuff we have, Lord. And it's also we become expectant of that. Lord, I pray we would never lose sight of what you have blessed us with. And, Lord, also just keep us mindful of those who are not as fortunate, not as blessed, Lord. And give us a spirit of generosity. Whether that's within our own family or those around us. And, just let us never forget what you've done for us. Pray, Lord, we also not just focus in on the monetary things, the physical blessings, Lord, but we would also recall that, Lord, most important of all, that you saved us. We praise you for that. And Lord, I pray that we would use our gifts, our offerings, and our physical blessings that you've given us, that we would use that to point others to you, draw them closer to you, so that they too may experience salvation and a relationship with you. We ask all this in Jesus' name.